Gina and I are just going to go over some of the options that are available for what's called flipping the classroom. Flipping the classroom isn't really a new idea, and some of you may be actually doing stuff like this already. Obviously, the focus these days, and especially at UWS, is about using the online environment as part of the flip, but people have been doing flipped classroom stuff for quite a long time, like getting the students to prepare outside class and then having a much more active classroom experience. But you don't have to, as that graphic suggests, necessarily do backflips. There are different levels of things you can do. So what we're going to do is introduce a very simple model that can be used to categorize the different types of activity you can use and the different degrees of flipping, depending on where you're starting from, of course. Oops. Oh. It's all right. This is the SAMR model. Some of you may have seen this before. It's actually a technology adoption model, and it's usually written upside down because the idea is that you start at the bottom. You can start very simply by just simply substituting something as part of an existing activity. The example given here is online resources rather than lab demonstrations to introduce people to a practical process or class. The next stage is that you can start augmenting what you actually do, giving the students something extra, enriching their learning experience. So podcasts on key concepts, quizzes, something extra they do so that when you get into the class you can do a lot more with that classroom time because the students have already absorbed some ideas and started thinking about it. And the idea is that the more engaging, as Sarah was showing, the more engaging you can make those activities and resources, the more likely the students are to do it. And if they just throw a textbook at them or a bunch of boring notes, they possibly won't read them, or you give them a difficult problem to do without any support before the class, and then you complain they turn up and they haven't done their homework. So that's the idea of augmenting. Modifying takes it a stage further, where you actually introduce different kinds of activities that you couldn't otherwise do. And then, of course, there's redefining, which means you're actually reframing how your students learn and doing entirely different concepts of what they might do. So one example is if you focus your learning around project-based learning or simulations or role plays when you haven't been doing that before. So what I'm going to do now is just show you a simple example of somebody who's introduced quite a lot of. This is Alan Kroski from the University of New South Wales, one of my former colleagues there. He's introduced quite a lot of online activities, and I'll just take you through some clips. And what I'd like you to do is, have you all got mobile phones or web-enabled devices? Because I'm going to run a poll on this. Now I need to. Where is this? Yeah, I'll do that in a minute. I need to actually get it to the right point first.
700 students a year in 2 cohorts. We used to run the labs with a demonstrator giving a mini lecture beforehand. The initiative was to improve that pre-lab exercise by using computers and then eventually to transfer that online. Once you start using the online environment a lot, you also...
Now, what I'd like you to do is, let's see if I can maximise this as well. Take out your mobile phones. You only have to remember this number once. Actually, can you... Or if you've got an iPad, you can use this URL. And can you give me your opinion on which level of the SAMR model that clip represents? Is it simply substitution? Is it augmentation? Is it modification? Or is it redefining? Where's the... Oh, there it is. Got any votes coming through?
Probably just take a minute to start doing.
Oh, here we are.
Whoa.
We have one response. Oops, there's a spelling mistake in that, I've just realised. Is anyone still to vote? Should be quicker the second time round once you've... Okay, so most of you think it's modification. That's interesting, because I'm not sure that's the one I would have chosen, but it's interesting for me to know that. So that's your interpretation of my explanation of that model. Okay. Right. Okay, so the next clip is
You got to click on here.
click on here.
Yeah.
There.
That, yeah, the little next icon.
Next icon.
Hang on.
It's not.
Yeah, because you're in this little one.
Oh, right, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Sorry, I'm not in the presentation one. Oops, sorry. Okay, so let's go to
create a community between you and the students. I guess the driver initially was to get the tutorials online, and we did a review of the course at the same time and put some more online materials in. So the first tutorial they do, which is a graded tutorial, is the tensile testing tutorial. This is actually what we see when we do that test. So that's quite a rich animation, and then they can go back in here and click on the different parts, and there's a few words about what's happening. I feel this is a very good example of a learning object. We have some self-test questions. They're drag and drops. We give them some numerical examples and we hyperlink the solutions like so. The students love the flexibility. They can spend as long as they want in the body of the tutorial, so students with English as a second language find it very useful to be able to work through it in their own time and go through it as many times as they want.
Right. Now, could you do that vote again for that last clip? Same question, different example. How are we doing for time? 25%. Oh, that's not. That's. Yeah. Interesting. Oh. Yeah. Augmentation. Yeah. You can imagine if you did that with a larger group, that would You can not show it if you want. You can show it afterwards.
You can only vote once as well.
You can only vote once. Everyone can only vote once. It won't let you vote again if anyone's tried. You get a message saying, "Go away, you've already voted." So most of you think that was augmentation. Yeah. I've got time for one more example. I'll probably skip the middle one. And take it to... Oh, hang on, I've done it again. Hang on. That's not working. Sorry. I know it's...
It's muted.
I know I tried to click and it won't... Oh, I must have slid that instead of the... Oops.
Evidence does indicate that it actually improves their performance. And of course the third thing is it allows us to provide more detailed feedback than what we can ourselves. You know, lots of people live a long way away. They might just have my class and that's all on that day. They might spend 3 hours travelling each way to get here. I can understand that they might go for another option. So I'm all about flexibility. I think you provide it as flexibly as you can. And of course my course also caters for a lot of different learning styles. We provide a whole lot of things in course resources. There's lecture notes. We also record the lectures, video record them, as well as voice record them. If we go away and do that experiment, we find that the materials in the pink zone... So we also put the lab sheets for the lab, and we also have PDF versions of the accessible tutorials so that they can download and read through it. Development of online materials is very time consuming and it's very difficult for academics to do, so we had a dedicated developer there who could assist the people develop the online materials.
Thought I'd put a bit of a plug-in for the...
The online environment does offer some tremendous advantages for creating a community in online learning that you can't create in class, and I think it flows across into the class. By virtue of the tutorial being online, we only had to timetable 1 hour blocks for the labs, and that freed up the timetabling immensely and has made our life a whole lot easier. Online submission is very useful because you know who's submitted, you know, things don't get lost. There's a record.
Right, so, one more vote. Right, what did you see in that last clip? Which levels? Substitution? No, that's just one person. Yep. It's the first time most of you have agreed. What's interesting about that model is I think you've all interpreted it differently, but that doesn't really matter. What Gina's going to do now is go over some specific tools and methods you might use to implement different parts of that SAMR model in your own teaching.
Can I grab the...
Okay.
I'll just hook myself up. Okay, so basically the SAMR model is one approach that can be used by teachers to effectively use the technologies that are available, but also helping them to maybe implement those flipped classroom strategies. So when we're thinking about this model and about flipped classroom strategies, what are we actually really trying to achieve? So if we have a look at the diagram that's up on the screen now, one of the things that I think that model really iterates is that we're trying to move students to work towards higher order thinking skills. So we're trying to move them from that automating type process shown by substitution and augmentation into more of that informating, those informating activities replicated by modification and redefinition. So we're trying to scaffold them through that model and those processes. So another thing I think that we're also really trying to do with the technologies that are available to us is also transition homework from being a solitary activity to one that is much more collaborative. So, moving students from working totally on their own to maybe working towards that community kind of environment. And essentially, I think a message that's often lost when we're thinking about flipped classroom strategies is that although the online component is important, so is the face-to-face element, and those two have to really complement and build upon one another. So here we have another diagram which classifies apps according to the SAMR model. So as you can see, there are different apps for each level, but I wouldn't necessarily say they're locked in and, it's a deal. Depending on how you use them would mean they could really slide from one level to another. So what I thought I'd like to show you today, I've picked 2 apps that I'd like to demonstrate as something that you might be able to implement in your classroom. So the first one is a QR code. So if you've got your mobile phones or iPads, you can actually use your QR reader, if you'd like to do that now, scan the QR code and you should get a PDF copy of our PowerPoint presentation today. So if you'd like to give that a try. So what you could do, you could create a document with images and hyperlinks and then share that document, create a QR code for that document, share it with your students in a lecture or a tutorial, and then you compare that with a discussion, a debate, for example, or a presentation like the one Carol and I and Sarah have done today. More importantly, students can actually do this as well. They can create a document and then share it with their peers through a QR code reader. A lot of people these days use a QR code even for their business cards. Instead of carrying around, a paper version, you can use a QR code instead. Has everyone had success with that? Yep. So it should work on Android phones. You will need a PDF reader on an Android phone for that to work.